Hello, my name is Sean Wren and welcome to the Bear Cave. In this interview, I sat down with director Chris McKay to talk about his fantastic new movie called The Tomorrow War. We talked about from how the project began to how the movie moved from Paramount to Amazon. Here's my chat with Chris McKay, and I do apologise for the poor lighting on my end. So before we start, I want to tell you how much I love the movie. It's my favourite action movie in a very long time.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Um, what interested you in the script when you first read it?
This story about generations, about fathers and sons, about fathers and daughters, about how what each generation sort of owes the next generation. There's lots of things. What are we responsible for? How do we leave the world, and as far as leaving the world in a better place? How do we leave the world better than we left it? Those are things that are always on my mind. Just even on a day by day basis. Kindness. How do you spread a little more love? How do you spread a little more, uh, yeah, love, kindness, generosity, empathy, sympathy? How can we live? How can we have a little bit more of that in our lives on a daily basis? How do we look, to the future and help people do things to make the world a better place? Whether you're talking about, you know, every issue, pick any issue, anything. How do you do something to further the cause of good? In a world that doesn't always trend that way. So that's those were things. So that was kind of baked stuff that was kind of in the script somewhere in there. When I got the script, it was called Ghost Draft, and it did the third act of the movie was radically different. It wasn't the same third act. There was no humor in the movie. The Miami action scene, there wasn't any of that rescue or any of that stuff. The character of Dan was there, and the family stuff was there, and his father sort of was there, but it was, and Zach did a great job, but it was just like, it was not a as much of a four quadrant movie. And so I brought in a couple of writers that, Bill Dubuque, who I'd worked with on Nightwing, and I really loved, and Liz Sarnoff, Jen D'Angelo, a few other people who, Matt and Craig, a couple people who could write jokes, and any people who could, like, we did a little writer's room, like who could write some jokes, who could help develop the third act into something, because I like the idea of, like, these characters you set up in the beginning of the movie none of them, they didn't get paid off in the end of the movie, in the original draft. And so I like this idea of, like, how can you set up some of these characters to get paid off later and be a part of the solution and all that kind of thing. All the things in Dan's life are leading to this conclusion if he just sort of, like, unlocks something in himself. So that's
Yeah, was the humour a major part for it for you? Because Sam Richardson's character has a lot of. There's a scene where they go down the staircase and he just
Mhm.
repeats saying shit, and
Yeah.
it's probably one of my favourite scenes because it's the most real, like, reactions someone would have in that
Yeah.
situation. Was
Yeah.
And when you've got essentially at the end of the movie where there's a line in it where, and then you've got his old Matt, and then there's somebody saying, "Did you really just say that?"
Yeah.
Was that important for you to say, yeah, this is an action, movie that in a lot of ways is a 90s action movie, but you need, so the tongue-in-cheek humor was in there.
Yeah, yeah, that was important to me. In fact, when I pitched the movie, I specifically, I had, I came in with a keynote, and about, as a director, you sort of talk about, like, just, images, tones, colors, the textures, like all sorts of stuff. Everyone's got a different way of doing it, but, like, just like, you sort of, you talk about, all these things that mean something to you in the script and how you want to bring that stuff out in the movie, and references and da 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 da, all that kind of thing. But the final panel was, just a picture of Sam and I hadn't worked with Sam. I didn't know Sam. I just by just seeing his stuff, just sort of a fan. And I said, even if you don't hire me, you got to hire this guy to play Charlie, because he's gonna be great, and he's gonna make this movie more fun than what's on the page. He's gonna lift things off the page, lift things off the screen, and you're really gonna you gotta hire this guy. And so fortunately they hired me, and then and so I was able to hire Sam, and yeah, Sam just came in and killed it. And yeah, the shit joke was literally something that we wrote into the script that was just like, and Charlie says, Charlie, had the character line Charlie, and then it said shit exclamation point, and then times 1,000, and that was the note for in the script for Sam to riff on, which he did great. And Sam was great. Like so we shot that on a descender rig going down. The building itself was actually a building that we found. It's an old the university building, old medical like a training hospital building, and they and so, but that staircase wasn't really a part of it. So there's actually that camera mover that going down the hallway is actually a stitch, because they didn't have stairwells that look like that. There's very few sort of that open open plan stairwell. So at least in Atlanta. So we stitched it together with somebody wiping the frame to go from the hallway in that one building into the stairwell. And then once we're in the stairwell, when Sam does that bit, we had a descender rig that went down the middle of the stairwell so that I could, it was on a head that the Lukash, the camera operator, can control. And so it just sort of like, just goes down and around the stairwell, just descends down the 3 stories of the stairwell we built, just following Sam literally. And Sam did that, like, I don't know how many takes I did with Sam, but it was just like, we had him go down the whole stairwell, just doing shit, shooting, reloading, and just, Sam was great. He was so much fun and such a real trooper. I mean, I had a really great cast. I had a really great crew. I was real lucky.
Yeah. One aspect that really got me from the beginning was the draft aspect. Was there any point in your mind to look back in history with, especially in the Second World War in the UK, there was, young kids signed up to, battle. Was that any part influenced in writing the draft aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think Zach had Zach, I think, was very fascinated about the draft and he's a student of history and the conscription and drafts that have happened in different cultures and different times in our history, the history of the world. Vietnam was a big one, I think, for him to reference. But that idea that the government could turn into you and say, we need you to come and do this thing. And I think he was sort of fascinated also because of the idea of, people getting older and not being alive in the time, that you would take people who were closer to their death than their birth, and or at least halfway there, and take them and put them in harm's way, and kind of, and again, sort of evoking this idea about how can you save the future that you may not be around for? I really liked that, and that in the script. But yeah, I mean, I think that that idea of sacrifice. I think sacrifice is a thing that we don't. That's another thing that we don't think about very much or enough. I think the idea of, like, sometimes you gotta. Sometimes I think people sometimes get hung up on winning an argument, winning a thing. Obviously the internet is, social media is sort of filled with this sort of thing. But sometimes it's better to it's better to sacrifice a little bit of something and to make the world a better place, to make the world a kinder place or something, than it is to win every single thing, win every single argument or every single point. I think that, I don't know, there's something about the idea of sacrifice that I guess means something to me. That you give something of yourself, that you don't have to satisfy your ego. You don't have to set your comfort. you know, sometimes you got to sacrifice a few things in order to make the world a little bit better. So I don't know. That's something I think about.
Yeah. And you were talking at the beginning about the emotion and heart of the film, and there's a lot of that. 'Cause, you know, the film made me cry. I
Mm.
mean, I can openly admit that. And I was just wondering, is this because it's an action film and you expect all the main characters to be men?
Right, right.
And do you think this is a more modern version of an action movie in a sense of masculinity?
Yeah, I mean, well, Chris. I mean, I think the whole thing Chris wanted to do, um, he wanted to do something different than what he had done before. Like obviously he's great in Jurassic World. He's great as Star Lord and all those kinds of things, and Andy Dwyer and everything else. Like Chris has a very clear brand, right? Like you know what you're getting with the Chris Pratt movie. And I think for him, he wanted to try something a little bit different. Chris is a very vulnerable actor.
Yeah.
He wears his heart on his sleeve. No matter what he's doing, he's it's whatever is happening in the scene. He's going to put it out there. He's not going to sort of hold back. He's going to give you everything that he's feeling. And he's a very generous actor with other actors. He invites other actors in, and he's really, the spirit of camaraderie and giving is just infectious. And so, there's definitely some stuff about being a man that's baked into this thing, baked into this Dan character, where Dan wants something or sees a vision of himself, or maybe is a little bit stuck in his life and doesn't, and has some history with his father and things like that are complicating his and putting a dark cloud over his his relationship with his family. Things that he's not willing to do. He's definitely not willing to forgive his father, right? Like that's clear. And I wanted, and since Chris was willing to go there, and I thought this, to me, the script in the movie, is meant to be about people exposing themselves, emotionally, about getting raw, about kind of like the thing I like about It's a Wonderful Life, and why, when I pitched this movie to the studio, I said that it's sort of like It's a Wonderful Life. It's a sci-fi version of It's a Wonderful Life, because if you saw your future, and if you saw whether that's you in the future or saw the world of the future, just the future, the next generation's future, our I don't have kids, but the kids, from that would be from my generation of adults, you would probably want to, make some changes. And I think that being a man is realizing sometimes, being able to admit your mistakes and your faults, and being able to be vulnerable, and being able to be open about the things you've done wrong, and try to fix those things, as many of those things you possibly can. I think that's part of being a man. That's strength. That's like real strength, sticking up for people who don't have somebody sticking up for them. Those are things to me that are what being a man is meant to be. And I think that's real strength, as opposed to kind of like posing and macho stuff and that kind of thing, which is, can be part of it. And there's nothing wrong with some of that, but some of it just is out of control because you don't have the other half. Everything's a balance, right? There's got to be a balance between being, physically strong or standing your ground or whatever it is, and being emotionally strong and being emotionally vulnerable. That probably sounds Orwellian, but like, vulnerability is strength. Like there is, it is, there is something, like being vulnerable is actually being really strong, and giving of yourself. So anyway, like, I think all that stuff was in what Chris was sort of talking about and dealing with when I, met with him, and it was what was kind of in the script, and where a direction that we wanted to go in, yeah, I mean, it's like kind of all, it was kind of all, kind of all in there. So, it's definitely on our minds.
Yeah. You were talking about the studio. I was just wondering because in the beginning of the year, the movie moved to Amazon, and I think
Yeah.
that this movie deserves, because of Larry Fong's cinematography, deserves one of that IMAX screen because he's just.
Turns out Larry Fong's a good DP, huh?
He's going to go places.
Yeah.
And
that kid's got a bright future.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, when did you find out about the move from Paramount to Amazon, and what was your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, at the time we had basically, we hadn't finished the movie, but the movie was done. Like the movie was done enough to show people. Like we still had some sound mixing to do, and some music. Music was still not quite done. Lauren was still working on stuff. So yeah, the mix, the sound effects, but all the shooting was done. All the cutting was basically done. I mean, I'm a tweaker, so like I'm gonna, mess around with stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's just, you're gonna get in there and try the last few things and all that stuff. But I mean, essentially, like everyone was sort of happy with where the movie was at, and the movie tested well and all that kind of thing. So, and we tested it in movie theaters. We went to St. Louis, we went to Kansas City, we went to Phoenix. And we tested the movie with real audiences and multiple, we would, because of COVID, we would, not fill up the theaters like you would in a normal test screening. We filled up, it was half full maybe, or something like that, maybe less. And they were also like the recliner seat thing. So people were already kind of spread out as it is. There wasn't the, rows and rows of people next to each other. So stadium seating, recliner seats. So we knew it played well, and it was fun to watch with an audience, because obviously there's a section of the movie towards the third act where all these characters start coming back, and there's kind of like that suddenly there's stuff that's happening about some of the people we met earlier, and you get a rolling laugh with the audience. Like the audience, the audience is just suddenly like gets the game of what the movie's doing, and then they're starting to laugh along with, like, oh God. And it was just fun to watch. It's fun to watch. So I got to have an experience where multiple times where we watched this movie, and people responded in the way it was intended. They were intended to respond, and so it was very satisfying to me, and a very satisfying experience for the audience. And that's the kind of thing you want as a filmmaker. I'm of two minds, because obviously we shot and cut and sound designed everything in this movie to be, on the biggest screens possible and with the biggest sound system and all that stuff. So yeah, I miss, we're not going to have that, and at the time we had no idea. This was January 2021. We had no idea what the future held for, theatrical stuff at the time. We didn't know what was going to happen. So so the studio reached out to all the streamers, and Amazon responded right away and wanted the movie, and wanted the movie in a big way, and promised to sort of put as much marketing effort behind the movies they humanly possibly could. And that was and to me there's this big screen spectacle, right, that you want. And then there's also connection to an audience. And what Amazon can promise is to get the movie out to as many people as humanly possible with really the lowest bar for entry. If you've got an original sci-fi movie, this is not based on a book, it's not based on a comic book, it's not based on a TV show or some existing property. It's an original thing. And is sometimes that's hard to it's hard to sell that kind of thing sometimes. It's hard to get people to show up to a movie like that. Even if you watch people's reactions to the trailers, I don't think people get the trailer can't tell you what's kind of good and fun about this movie. Like there's no trailer, I don't think, that can do that, or that's not something that they were interested in trying to sort of craft into a trailer, which is, marketing's a hard job. So if you just sort of look at stuff on the surface, the movie can look like a lot of other things. But hopefully what people discover if they watch the movie, and what Amazon can get, like I said, a super low bar for entry to get you to watch the movie, you know, the more people will get a chance to see this movie than maybe if it had been put out theatrically. More people will get and that's what you want as a filmmaker, is to have a dialogue with an audience and to be able to get people to watch something and hopefully share an experience. And I just hope that people, you know, I hope they don't watch on their phones. I hope that this is me asking through you, Sean, when you write this article, please don't watch on your phones. Please don't watch it on your iPad. Try to watch it on the biggest TV that you have with the loudest sound system. Invite your neighbors over. The thing I keep saying is, crank up the sound system and invite your neighbors over so they're not mad about you cranking up your sound system. But have a little screening and bring people together and watch it, because it is something fun to watch, together, whether that's together in a big crowd or together as a family or together as family and friends or whatever. But it's a movie that's meant to be, shared with people. And so that's what's exciting about the Amazon thing for me, is that more people will probably get a chance to see it ultimately than if it had been theatrical, based on where we're at right now and how hard it is to get people to show up in a movie theater in the good times as well as bad times. It's sometimes difficult to get people to show up to a movie theater for original sci-fi. So hopefully more people will get a chance to see it, and that's what's exciting to me.
Well, I'll be excited for anything you do. I mean, you got that, you're working with Universal and doing a horror movie, and I don't like horror movies, but I'm going to see your horror movie.
It's a horror movie, but it's also a comedy. It's also an action movie. There's it also has a lot of similarity to Nightwing on some level, because it is about a mentor-mentee type relationship, but it's taking place with from the mentee's perspective and not the mentor. So,
well, thanks so much for speaking with me, Chris. It's always a pleasure.
It's great seeing you.
I mean, it's been nearly 4 years since we last spoke. So I mean, face to face like this, and I'm just so excited for people to see this movie, and hopefully, and I hope, fingers crossed, that they'll experience the same way that I did.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Sean. I really appreciate it. It's good seeing you, man.
Yeah, you too, buddy.
Talk soon.
I would like to thank Chris again for taking the time to chat to me, and to repeat his words, please see The Tomorrow War on the biggest screen you possibly can, because it truly deserves it. The film comes out on Amazon Prime on July 2nd. Thank you so much for watching, and please leave a comment and share on social media, where you can follow me on Twitter @Sean_Wren. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.